to this edition of Small Business Breakthroughs presented by the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. The Small Business Development Center, if you're not aware, is a business development entity that supports entrepreneurs really anywhere from I have an idea about a business, and that's all because I don't know anything about business, to I've been in business for a while and I want to implement something to help me do better or to help me continue to grow or whatever it happens to be. We do work in obviously business startup. We do work assisting individuals with funding. We do work assisting people with operations and accounting processes, as well as marketing and sales and other areas that help people grow their business. So we also want to thank our partner in this endeavor, the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, also known as the DEC, DEC. The Dublin Entrepreneurial Center is located in Dublin, Ohio, and it is a facility that has office space all the way from really virtual office space to actual walled offices and different things of that nature. We at the Small Business Development Center have an office there, and typically that is where I do Small Business Breakthroughs. Today, I am in my office at Columbus State Community College. So I think we're going to be good. It'll be a little different, but we should be good to go. And I also want to reference, as we relate to the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, it's a great place that if you need space, the space is typically reduced rent. It's there to support you and help you get your business moving. At the same time, it is a great place to interact and connect with other entrepreneurs and small business owners who may be going through similar things to you or may have gone through similar things to you and can offer advice and assistance in addition to the things that we do at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. So again, thanks to the DEC. And if you are interested in more information on the DEC, you can go to decindublin.com and visit the website and connect with Rebecca Parker, who is the individual that would be there to assist you if you have any questions about space or interacting with the DEC. So today, we are excited to have a longtime friend, Dorinda Byers, who is currently the business development consultant with the Auditor of the State of Ohio's office, and the auditor is Keith Faber. I wanted to make sure I had to read that to make sure I got the auditor's name right and all of that. So we appreciate everything that they're doing for that. So Dorinda, thank you for being here. Again, we've known each other for a number of years, from way back when you were with the PTAC, which is Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which is now known as Apex Accelerators. And you guys did great work in assisting small businesses in terms of interacting with their, needing to work with the government or sell to the government or different things of that nature. So we appreciate everything that you've done in the past, and we certainly are excited to hear what you're going to be, what you're doing now. So Dorinda, thanks for being here. If you would like to kind of introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what you've got going on.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's wonderful to be back with you and the Columbus State team. You know I'm a huge fan of yours, as well as the Columbus State SBDC, for being such a great resource to helping our businesses grow. I'm delighted to be here to tell you a little bit today about the State Auditor's Office and some of the different topics and workshops that we're offering. So the State Auditor is one of 5 independently elected offices in the state. The others are Attorney General, Treasurer, Secretary of State, and Governor. Our charge in the Auditor's Office is to primarily make sure that tax dollars are being spent lawfully and appropriately. How do we do that? We complete financial audits. We have about 5,900, believe it or not, types of governmental entities around the state of Ohio that we audit, and we complete about 4,000 audits per year. It could be a cemetery, it could be a library, it could be Columbus State, it could be a local school district. We're really looking at how those dollars were spent. If we find an occasion where dollars were spent inappropriately or we receive reports of fraud from citizens, we also investigate those through what we call our Special Investigations Department. Some of you may be familiar with that department because of a recent high-profile case with the Columbus Zoo where we had some misspending. We do investigate every single complaint that we receive, and when we receive those, we actually can take those all the way through if there are legitimate issues to prosecution and pressing charges and, putting individuals into prison. A couple of other things that we do are providing training and support to local governments. Many of our local elected officials, like township trustees, might be part-time. So they may need some help and have some questions about various aspects of their job as it relates to finances. They can call our local government services department and we can help them. We also do training on things like public records. And then finally, we have a performance audit shop where we are trying to look at how programs are using dollars in terms of effectiveness. So where is a program today versus where might it want to be tomorrow? And what are some recommendations we can make for improvement? So one of those, for example, was with the College Credit Plus program, where we did a performance audit of that program, where high school students can actually take college classes at no cost to themselves and their families. So that's a little about what our office does at the auditor's office.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned the College Credit Plus program. That is a great program in Ohio that does allow individuals in high school to actually get college credit that does transfer to any state-funded school in the state of Ohio. It would also then transfer to many of the private schools and outside of the state too. But my son was one of the first College Credit Plus students at Columbus State through Marysville High School, and actually graduated from Columbus State, then graduated from high school, and then went on to Bowling Green, and now has 3 degrees from Bowling Green. So definitely it was a great program that I highly encourage anybody to take a look at. So again, thanks for mentioning that. The auditor's office, you referenced a lot of the different things that they do, and I think you referenced one of the real important pieces is to support the local governments, because the closer you get to the local area, the government elected officials, they are citizens. This is not their primary job, and they do need support to make sure that they can do what they need to do, obviously. And when you get into township trustees and things of that nature, they don't have a lot of paid professionals around them either. So, it's definitely a great support piece there. So what we're going to do is we're going to launch into some different topics that Dorinda works with as a representative of the auditor's office. It can support small business owners in a variety of different ways. So we're going to talk about a variety of different topics. If anyone has any questions regarding this, go ahead and put that in the chat. So I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. And if you have any questions, go from there. Otherwise, we will just kind of proceed and have some conversations with that. Also, want to reference that those of you that are here today, if you are interested in it, like I said, our recording of this will be on our YouTube channel probably within the next couple of days. And you can check out all of the other things that we have on our YouTube channel, which can be of great help to you with your small business. So let's go ahead and jump in here. So I have a question as we get started. So, when we talked, you have workshops and some other things like that we're going to kind of go through and talk about, some of the key points from those. But it's great information, it's great stuff, but it's not something I would normally think to see from the auditor's office. So how did you get there? How did the auditor's office get into delivering these great workshops?
Well, thank you, Mike. That's a great question. So, yes, we are offering workshops. One of the reasons why is because people don't know what our office does. So, we were getting calls about things like property taxes, for example, and we aren't the people that handle property taxes. Sometimes when we go out, people think we're the IRS and we're auditing their tax returns. That's not us either. So, we decided, the auditor specifically, that a campaign was needed to help people better understand what our office does and to share some of the lessons that we have learned in working with local governments on topics like difficult conversations, time management, or cohesive teams. So we've been trying to share with others what we do. We also want to share the very, very important nature of cybercrime and cyber fraud these days, and also how individuals can report fraud to us if they suspect that something might be going on in one of their local governmental entities. What is the way that they can report fraud? And then finally, to help individuals know that audits of their local governmental entity are all available on our website. So if they're curious about, hey, how is my school district spending money? They can actually look up an audit on our website and look up, Columbus City Schools, for example, and get copies of that past audit and kind of see what the performance and what the finances of their local governmental entity are. So those are a few reasons that we kind of got started doing this broader outreach, to share more information about our office, to help individuals understand some of the resources we have available, and then to actually make sure that individuals know what our office is doing on behalf of Ohio taxpayers.
Okay, great. That's great. So you mentioned cybercrime, so why don't we kind of start there? Couple of months ago, we had a great guest. Tyler Smith was on, and he talked about protecting your business from cybercrime, and he also talked about artificial intelligence and different things like that. So if you're interested in that, go back and check that out on YouTube. But talk to me a little bit about cybercrime and kind of how you can protect your business from being attacked.
So that's a great question, Mike. On our website at the Auditor's Office, we actually have some resources that you can take a look at. Under our local governments and cyber tab, you can take a look at kind of what we have there. One of the things we have seen with local governments is things called vendor redirects. And what that means is someone emails into an entity, let's just say, and pretends to be a vendor, perhaps a paving company that maybe a local village has done business with in the past. And the message looks very legitimate. Looks like it may have the logo of the company, it may have an address, etc. But they're essentially asking for the business to change the banking information. So the business is representing to the governmental entity, hey, I need the banking information changed in the way that you pay me. And unfortunately, we have seen that happen where individuals, maybe in the governmental entity, and this happens to businesses as well, make changes there. And then the money is not going to the actual vendor. It's going to someone who is essentially impersonating that vendor. So we're seeing that as an increased opportunity that businesses need to be aware of, as well as our local governments. We're also seeing interest in things like health data and personal data of individuals. So, for example, a school district or even a college like Columbus State that maybe has some of that data, that can be very valuable to cyber criminals. So we're seeing targeted attacks to get that information through hacking. We're also seeing some things called spear phishing, where I just had this happen to me last week, where I got an email here at the auditor's office. It showed a logo and sounded kind of official, looked like a memo, and said, hey, you need to change your password right away. We need you to click this link here. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I don't think that this is legit. Let me forward this to our help desk and just make sure, but it doesn't sound correct. So the point is, there are a number of different ways that cyber criminals can access you, and it's important to have the right controls into place, and it's important to be aware of that training for your employees so they know what to look for. And it's also important, obviously, to have the appropriate protections into place through antivirus software, those kinds of things.
Yeah, my understanding, when a lot of times small businesses get attacked, it is not because they don't have different pieces and parts in place. It's because their employees have done something to kind of open the door for the attackers. So that could be as simple as, like you said, a phishing attempt where they click on a link. Here at Columbus State, uh, our IT area is pretty diligent about that. If you ever get an email from me, you'll see, there's a lot of things and pieces and parts in there where it's talking about how, where it's coming from and all that. But even more so than that, it's, if you have, like, say you're going to a coffee shop and you get on their Wi-Fi with your phone or your work phone, or you log in to your email or something like that, that does sometimes can open the door for attackers to get in and get access to what you're doing. I think a lot of times people think of these attackers as being this, covert organized system. And a lot of times, that's not the case. I mean, it may be just a few people, it may be a few people international that are doing some things, but it could be somebody who's actually looking to, try to get into somebody's personal data by just sitting in a coffee shop and just kind of monitoring and seeing what's going on and different things like that. So that can be a huge piece, and I think really something that uh, business owners need to be cognizant of and provide the training and the guidance to their employees to understand how this can impact their business and how employees should be managing their technology.
Yes, I think that's a great point, Mike, particularly when people are out somewhere, as you mentioned, using a public Wi Fi kind of network. The security on there is not obviously as tight as it is on a private network. So, what are the appropriate precautions that need to be taken if your employees are out there using a public Wi Fi network? Maybe they're at the airport, those kinds of things. They need to understand what should I be doing if I am in a public place and I am needing to connect to that Wi-Fi. What do I need to do to make sure that my business and my records of my employer are appropriately protected?
Yeah, you mentioned airports. We talked about this at our staff meeting a couple of weeks ago, but if you go to charge your phone at the charging stations that are, in a lot of the chairs now at the airport, I guess my understanding is that if you just plug the USB part into the charger, that can open it up to individuals being able to hack into your phone from there. Now, if you actually have a plug-in and you plug in, I think that helps to resolve that. But you just don't know. And if this is not what you do as a regular course of your business, then you got to really be cognizant of that. And it's tough from a small business owner standpoint, because let's say that you got 5 or 6 employees. um, you know, you guys are all doing business. You're all doing everything that you need to do. And it makes it tough because you don't have sometimes a training person, or you don't have even an in-house IT dedicated expert. You may have somebody in-house that kind of manages it, knows what they're doing, or you've got an outside entity that's supporting you. So it's really important that you look at these things and are able to take the time and dedicate some effort around that.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me to, some conversations around time management. So you talked about some of the things that you guys do to advise on time management. So you want to touch on that?
Sure. So in our time management workshop, a couple of the things that we talk about are the Eisenhower matrix. Not sure if anyone here is familiar with that, but it kind of looks at the urgency of something and the importance of something. And there are essentially four quadrants to the matrix. And what you want to be looking at are which types of tasks are you doing when? Are you doing the important and the urgent, the important but not urgent, or are you down there focusing a lot of times in the urgent but not important, and the other one, which is not urgent, not important? So really trying to think about your day and what buckets are the tasks that you're doing kind of fitting into when you think about time. Another thing we try to think about is how do we clarify our values and priorities around time? One of the questions that I love to think about is, what can I do today that might prevent an emergency tomorrow? So when we think about something that I need to get done today, how might that impact my tomorrow and make it better? What's something that I really need to do today, but I don't want to do today? And how can I maybe knock that out essentially early in the day? Another thing that we try to look at is we really try to look at the Pomodoro technique as a method to kind of help with that time management. So essentially what Pomodoro says is work on a task for 25 minutes. You're not looking at your phone. You're not looking at emails that come in. You're not doing other stuff. You are solely focused for 25 minutes on that task. And you'll be amazed at how that can maybe break procrastination on something, for example, because you think, well, I only have to do it for 25 minutes. The best part is you get a 5-minute break after you actually complete that 25 minutes. And you can actually kind of do a series of those Pomodoros through the day and kind of cycle into dedicated focused work, break, dedicated focused work, break. And you'll be amazed at how much time that you actually can get accomplished on something by just being dedicated to it. And again, breaking that logjam of procrastination, because I only have to do this for 25 minutes. But often what you'll find is you get on a roll and then you want to keep going with what it is that you're doing because, hey, I'm seeing some progress. I'm seeing some momentum here. I've got some things done.
Absolutely. I'm working on a doctorate degree and I have to write a lot. And,
Oh, wow.
a lot of times on the weekends, I'm working on, multi-page papers and doing a lot of writing. And I use this technique to help me kind of stay focused. Now I do a 50-minute and a 10-minute off,
Okay.
but that allows me to say, okay, for this 50 minutes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on this, do this, and then I'll take, 10 minutes and then I go back at it for another 50 minutes or something like that. But whatever the time that you use, I think it's really good because it does keep you um, on task for a certain window of time. It allows you to then focus in and do that. And it makes a huge difference for me. It's really interesting how, um, you know, how much it does focus my efforts when I'm trying to do that.
I agree. And I think, Mike, you just talked about something else that's important. It's really that focus. And so often we don't necessarily understand what are our priorities and what is it that we're really trying to do. And I'm a big fan of asking ourselves questions to try to help clarify what is it that we're working on. So when we think about time management, I love the clear framework. Is this essentially connected to something that's really core and really important to me, this activity I'm working on? Is it linked to one of my goals? Is it essential, something that only I can do, nobody else can do? Is it advantageous? Is it, going to move me towards my future and more of an investment? And then is it reality based or am I trying to really perfect this too much? So asking ourselves questions about how is this activity that I'm working on right this particular minute linked to where I want to go in the future? So I love that because I think as a small business owner, often you're so consumed with a lot of things that you have to get done that you sometimes can lose sight of that bigger picture of where it is that you really want to go because you're down in the weeds of other things. So sometimes just taking that step back to ask ourselves questions and reflect can be really, really helpful when we think about time management and how we're spending time and what it is that we're working on any given day.
Yeah, absolutely. I see, I used to work for Franklin Covey, Stephen Covey, Franklin
Oh,
Quest.
yeah.
If you're
Uh-huh.
back in the 90s, you remember that, and the day planner and the
Sure
whole thing
do.
like that. Um, and that was a big thing. Is one is to be able to do your planning for the day and have a tool. In that case, we had a book with pages and different things like that. And you would plan your day out each day. And if you actually looked at the entire system, your day was kind of guided by task, A, important task, B, and C task. But those tasks were actually intermittent in between some of the bigger pieces, the larger rocks, if you recall that piece. And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about here is to try to figure out, okay, what is the most important piece and what do I need to put in here that I need to work on?
Absolutely. And I think another great way we can do that, Mike, is to kind of have real clear values. One of the things that the auditor, you mentioned Auditor Faber earlier, has really done here at the auditor's office is to have kind of those three really key priorities that we are, all working toward every day: efficient, effective, transparent government. So everyone in our office can recite, what those three things are and really think, okay, is what I'm doing helping to make a government more effective, more efficient, or more transparent? So again, having some of those key priorities and values like we talked about can guide yourself, but can also guide your employees. So they are thinking about what their work looks like every day and how that ties to the core mission and how that ties to the impact that your business is making for your customers. So what are you doing to make it simple for your employees to essentially understand what values and what they need to be focused on every day and what that looks like for the betterment of your business and your customers?
That's a great point because as a business owner, especially in a small business, you're calling the shots, you're doing the things, you're really implementing, you're developing and implementing the strategy, but you have your employees, your team that is also doing these things. And it's really critical that you're able to take the time to build out something that gets it from your head to them. I know that I'm not the greatest at that sometimes, but I try, and we do communicate quite a bit. Um, one of the things that Barb Park Navy, who's on here from our team, mentioned that she likes to write things down because she likes to cross things off. And
Huh?
that's always been a big thing. It's one of those things you can see progress. You can see how well you're doing by doing that. And I think that's important. A couple of other things that wanted to discuss is that, you know, I think number one, it's important that you do take time to do this planning. Um, you know, plan the bigger pieces of this and then how you can break that down and work on it. But what are you going to do today? So we talked about this, but you've got to have some place to put it. And you know, I'm not a huge advocate of having post-it notes everywhere and doing things like that to guide my daily actions. But I use, and this is where I had a challenge. I was going to mention this. So when back in the day, I had the book, I had the planner, and I used it all the time, and I had the system, and everything was kind of guided by that. Excuse me. But as we started to transition into technology, and we started to get our Outlook, and you've got your calendar, and you've got your email, and all of that kind of stuff, it became more difficult to connect this hard copy system to the online system or the electronic system. Now, obviously Outlook has the pieces in there, but you've got to really kind of watch what you're doing. So I think it's important to, one, as you're doing the planning, to one, do the planning on a regular basis and do the planning on what I'm going to do today, but have a tool that you can put it into that will actually integrate with some of the things that you're working
Excuse me. Yes, Mike, I couldn't agree more. When you mentioned the Covey planner and Barb writing her list, I
Mhm.
thought those were both great examples. The point is, every individual, every business needs to have a system that works for them, right? And my system may not look the same as yours, may not look the same as Barb's, may not look the same as Danielle, Pamela, Sita that we have on here today. But as long as we have a system that works for us and we can translate what that system means to the other people who are working with us and working for us, that's what really matters, is finding the system that works for you. It may be a Covey planner, as you said, it may be a computer, but I'm kind of with Barb. I still have kind of my notebook, and I actually have a backup planner, believe it or not, a paper calendar that I still use. And someone had laughed at me for that, but not long ago, she lost her phone on a little trip in the Ohio River. And she said, "Now, Dorinda, I see why you have that, because everything's kind of still written down in that paper planner. And I've been missing appointments because I don't remember who I had an appointment with." So the other key is have that backup system, right? We talked about the importance of that with cybersecurity. Whatever your system is, make sure that you also have some sort of backup system, because no system is perfect. If something goes wrong, what's the backup plan? And we all know as small business owners how important having that backup plan is. We certainly know it at the auditor's office as well. We've got to have a backup plan. You know, if something goes wrong, somebody's out today, the audit work has to carry on. What's that backup plan look like? And what's that system that's going to work for you and your business, not necessarily someone else?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you can, again, using technology to where, everybody, uses their phone for a lot of different things. I know I use Apple reminders, so I can just tell Siri to remind me about this and remind me to do this tomorrow. And it does put it into a list. So at minimum, I have it down to where I can go back and not forget about it and, making notes. Okay, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do this now, and be able to mark it off and it's done. So that's a tool that I use. And again, it's whatever, you use and whatever works for you. And as an organization, you may want to, again, have more organizational wide type of pieces and parts that you use, how you do that. I think that another challenge with time management is just email. So again, I think too many people let their inbox guide their day.
Yes, I agree
And
with that.
yeah, they get gone. And so that does pull them away when you talk about the values and what's important, because you're now doing stuff typically, if you're letting that happen, that's important to other people. It still may be important, but it's
Absolutely. But I
pulling
think
you
you're
away from
right,
the
Mike.
other.
It's making a deliberate choice about that email and about how much time you spend on it. And another quick thing, and I'm sure you have done this, Mike, at the SBDC, that I think could also be helpful to small businesses, is having those tools and templates. So one of the things we've done at the auditor's office is, obviously, I mentioned earlier, we do 4,000 audits per year. We have a Center for Financial Audit Excellence. And one of the things they've done is create tools, checklists, et cetera, for these projects, so people kind of have that step by step guide and have those best practices kind of readily available to them. So, for similar types of tasks, if you're sending someone a similar type of marketing email, why not have a marketing template that you can just copy and paste into your email versus constantly having to retype the same thing over and over? So I also encourage people, think about in your business, where is there an opportunity maybe for something like we've done here at the auditor's office to document those best practices and to also use those tools and templates so you can kind of use those rather than having to reinvent the wheel on similar types of tasks that you're doing over and over. Those can be huge time savers.
Yeah, the other thing that's beautiful about templates is that you can manage your branding that way too. So,
Absolutely.
you've got them set. It has the branding messages, it has the branding look, logos, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and then you can just, here's where you write, or here's where you do this, or do different things like that. But it helps you control your marketing from a branding perspective. And I think that's important.
I
And
couldn't agree more, Mike.
yeah, the last thing on this is that I think that a lot of individuals um, get distracted again by their phone. And what I did is that I put different do not disturbs kind of things on my phone. So typically when I'm at work, I have it set so that the people, the important people can call me on my phone, different things like that. People can call on the phone, but the notifications, the stuff that pops up on your screen when you're trying to work, and all of a sudden here's something that pops up, and boy, I got to go look at that because I got to see, what Taylor Swift and Kelsey are, getting engaged, the whole 9 yards. So, you know, I may not know that they got engaged until after I get done with work, but who cares? It's fine. So, but that's the thing, to keep the distractions down, because that will pull your attention away. And I don't remember the number, but there was a number, an amount of time that once you get distracted, once you get disturbed when you're working, that it takes for you to get back at it. I don't know, it's like 15 minutes or something like
Yes.
that. And, in the course of a day, then, that cuts a lot of time out.
It certainly does. It definitely cuts a lot of time out. And I think you hit on it. Where possible, eliminate distractions. And the other one that I like to do as we wrap this up is to block time for those things that are really critical. Hey, I need to block some time to prepare for the podcast that I'm going to be having with Mike today. I need to block some time to prepare for that presentation that I've got next week. So, as much as possible, trying to block that time into our calendars when we know that there is prep time required for something, for example, making sure that we have that time and that we block that time. And then that, as you just mentioned, Mike, we're serious about protecting that time from distractions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the key. You got to protect that time. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really important. So let's jump into something else here.
Sure.
I appreciate, everything you sent me. Where do you want to go next?
Well, let's talk maybe a little bit about teams
Okay.
and kind of how we're doing with our teams. So obviously here at the auditor's office, we work in teams when we are doing audit work. So teams is something that's very important to us. One of the things we have looked at is that 5 behaviors of a cohesive team model, Mike, and it kind of starts with trust, at the very bottom, because we have found that creating trust on our teams is really critical to then advancing up that pyramid of some of the other things, which include accountability, conflict resolution, really looking at getting those results and how committed is our team. But we've got to kind of start down at the very bottom with trust. So we have to have it for a small business owner. People have to trust us. We also have to have that trust on our team if we're going to serve our customers as well as we possibly can. So really figuring out how we're working together as a team can be something really important, not only here at the auditor's office, but to small businesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you kind of work up this model, I mean, how do you recommend, as we talk about it, just the interactions with the employees? So, you've shared some stuff with me about, critical conversations, coaching, how all of this interaction with your team um, is really important as a small business owner. And again, I think small business owners typically get into business because they are passionate about something, product, service, or something like that, right? And they're typically not coming out of HR. They may not understand that piece. And, they may not have had a work environment where they were that encourage these types of things. But this is where, again, it's going to help them be more successful the more that they're able to build, whether it's their emotional intelligence or whatever, so that they can have these kind of conversations. So you talked about in terms of coaching, you talked about maybe you've got 7 key questions here as part of the was it Michael Bungay Steiner's coaching habit? Did I say that right?
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Mike. What a great resource. So for all of you listening today, Michael Bungay Stanier is just an absolutely fabulous author. So much good information. And what I love about coaching is it's a great way, as you said, Mike, to build those relationships with individuals. And what we're doing essentially is we're asking them questions to help them process and to help them think about how they are doing their work, what they're doing every day, and why they're doing it. So, a couple of the questions of Michael's that I especially love, we do a lot of new hire training here at the auditor's office because, like many businesses, we have an aging workforce. So we have new talent coming in all the time. A lot of our new talent is coming in straight out of college. So we do, again, a lot of the training with them. One of the questions we like to ask after we've done that training is, what was most helpful for you and what was most useful for you? That really kind of helps us pinpoint the behaviors that we're doing, the information that we're offering that really was of most benefit to them, and allows us then to go back and make changes to our training programs and some of what we have, tools, templates, etc. If something isn't useful to people, then that's a trigger for us to make those improvements. But it also helps people stop and think, gee, what was most useful to me about that training program? So as much as possible, if we can get people thinking and get people learning, I think that's really important. The pace of technology is changing so much. You know, you mentioned AI earlier. We're obviously thinking, like everyone else, how is AI going to impact our business? How will it impact our local governments that we're serving and the services we provide to them? The point is, we have to be ready to pivot and learn these days. And I think those questions and that coaching can help build those relationships. Another question that I like is, what's the real challenge here for you? You know, I was talking to a group the other day, and one of the folks there brought up that they had some individuals on their team who were supposed to be doing outreach, and they just weren't doing it, and they didn't really, have a good reason why. So she thought she was going to have a conversation with them and try to figure out, why aren't they doing this? So she finally kind of got to the heart of the matter of what's the real challenge. And they really didn't know how to do outreach. So she developed a training program to teach them, this is how you could maybe start up a conversation. Here's your elevator pitch about what our business does, that kind of thing. But we have to really understand what the challenge is for people sometimes. If they're not doing what we need to have done and it's not working well, what is the challenge for them and why isn't that working? So some of those questions can really help us pinpoint that without making them defensive either, and helping us to learn and better understand our team.
Yeah, that's for sure. What are your thoughts regarding the format of which you're having these conversations? So now there's so much more of remote work, hybrid work. Maybe you've got some staff in, you have some staff out, different things like that. In terms of having these conversations, because again, I've always been, when I'm going to have this conversation, or if I'm going to do one-on-one, now during the pandemic, it's a different conversation, but we used to have conversations there, but we did it over Zoom, and we were very specific, or where we said, okay, this is what we're doing here. We didn't just, we did have staff meetings, and the staff meetings were more information transfer as well as keeping people connected. But now it's a situation where we have a hybrid workforce, and when we do one-on-ones, we're very intentional, that's the word I was looking for, about we're going to do this in person, and we'll set it up when they're here and different things like that. But I think it's easy to fall back into we're going to do this over Zoom, or, when you were talking about Teams earlier, I was thinking, well, we talk about Microsoft Teams, but,
Yeah.
But it's easy to fall back on that because it's easy. But I think it's really important to be intentional. And I think it's important to try to do stuff in person in any of these conversations. So when you have, which I want to talk about next, when you have difficult conversations, you're not all of a sudden shifting everything, and you got to come into the office and do this when our normal conversations are in the office.
Absolutely. So I think you hit on a couple of things, Mike. Number one, regular check-ins, right? We want to have those regular check-ins. We don't want to just be waiting until something, blows up, to then have that conversation. So what does that regular check-in structure look like? That's another one where I kind of like to have a template, right? What three questions maybe are we going to cover during this check-in this week? What's going well? Where do you need help? What were your successes this week? I also like to just kind of check in with people. How are things going for you this week? Tell me a highlight of what was going on. Because I think, as you mentioned, in a hybrid workplace, we have to build up that relationship and those trusts. We are a hybrid workplace here at the auditor's office as well. So we try to spend time on that. If we're talking to a new group of people, I just did this yesterday with a group out of Cincinnati, and we were talking over the computer and it was presenting a workshop. We started off with name, role, and what's your favorite ice cream flavor. And just something that simple sometimes can break the ice with people. So I think in a hybrid workplace, it's important to kind of have that regular check-in and that regular touch point, and then also to do that little something extra to see how is somebody really doing and try to make that connection. A lot of people these days are struggling with mental health. So we want to, provide that safe place where they can talk with us and let us know kind of what's on their mind. And we also want to kind of build that rapport and that relationship with them. So like you said, then later a difficult conversation doesn't have to be so difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said, because I think when you're having, when I'll continue to use this, intentional conversations, where you're asking questions like you have brought up, having something that's preset for you as the manager or the owner, to make sure that you cover it and make sure you make notes so that you have that and you can refer to it as you go to the next one or something like that. I think that's really, really critical as you do this. Now,
Yes. I agree. And we're fortunate here in that Auditor Faber is a huge believer in training and development. So in October, for example, we are coming together as an entire team for a day of training. That can be challenging, but taking that time to really build those relationships among our whole team and bringing everyone together. And I know you're a proponent of that and do a lot of that as well, Mike, trying to just bring that whole team together so we have those chances for everyone to build those relationships. And maybe the team learns from each other as well. That's one of the things we see at our training days at the auditor's office. We can often learn, hey, here's what somebody over here is doing. Maybe that would work better for me. So as much as we can facilitate those conversations among our own team and bring that team together, we don't have to then be the only person and the only resource as a small business owner for our team if we can facilitate those conversations and connections among our own employees as well.
that's true. So let's take it to the next step. So, what if you are the owner, the manager, whatever, and you now have to have some difficult conversations with your employees? What are your recommendations there?
Well, that's a great question because I think we are increasingly finding that accountability is a challenge these days, right? And so we do have to have those difficult conversations in various kinds of areas. One of the things I like to think about is how do we prepare for those difficult conversations? One of the methodologies I like to think about is when I'm going to have a difficult conversation, what do I want for me out of this difficult conversation? What do I want for the other person? What do I want for the relationship? And what do I want for the other stakeholders in the relationship? So just trying to stop and think about yourself first, the other person, the relationship, and the stakeholders. And I just think that that preparation is so critical. As a small business owner, sometimes we may have to fire someone, for example, and that's not a fun conversation. That's where that preparation also could be really, really critical. Have those key points written down and practice with someone else in your circle. I think that if we're having a difficult conversation, Mike, where we're trying to figure out something went wrong, we had an incident here, something went wrong, and we're not sure what went wrong. We want to approach that as a learning mindset. And that's where, as you mentioned earlier, those questions are really critical. Tell me kind of about this situation, putting those questions together and asking people what happened and getting to the bottom of that. I love to do that. A lot of times in difficult conversations, that temperature gets a little high in the room. So we have people emotional, people are upset, people are, frustrated. How do we dial that back? Well, we try to tap into that logical brain, and that's where those questions can actually help too. We want to ask those questions that get people thinking. So, can you tell me more about that? What is most important to you? What are some options you can think of here? We want to try to get them really thinking when we have those difficult conversations, because then they're using that part of their brain, not so much the emotional part of the brain. I also like to think about there's lots of different models out there. Like we think about coin when we're giving somebody feedback. Find a model that works for you and find two or three of those key questions that you really like that you can use when you are having those difficult conversations, and kind of keep those on standby. You're not probably going to be able to remember everything, but if you have just kind of one model that you keep in the back of your mind, you might be able to remember that one model and those few key questions.
Absolutely. You know, the difficult conversations can actually create a much better employee and can help you too. So I think you mentioned that, but I mean, it's, really being able to have that interaction so that you understand better where they're coming from. Because again, it just may be a mismatch that, okay, once you understand that, let's shift them over here where they fit better or different things like that. And then there is no terminations or something like that. When you get in as a small business owner, you get into terminating, that's a whole thing that you got to deal with that is really going to pull you away from what you're trying to do. And hopefully, if you ever get to that point, you have built out your HR system where you have a system to do that. You have, progression of conversations and different things of that nature that you can document, because the worst thing to do is just to go off uh, half cocked and fire somebody. And then the next thing you know, you're getting sued.
I agree. And I would be remiss, Mike, if I didn't mention also at the auditor's office, we see this. People sometimes are very upset. If something goes wrong, with an audit and whatever, people can get very upset. So we all have sometimes difficult clients that we have to deal with. So I think it's really important also to think about some basic principles of de-escalation. And a lot of times people want to be heard. So can you tell me more about that? I think that's a great question to use in those kinds of difficult situations. We also want to be aware of, physical space and kind of keeping some physical space between ourselves and a person that, might be very upset. And I think in a business type of situation, or in a situation where we have, our employees to think about, if they have a really difficult client to deal with, what's the protocol? Do they feel empowered to use that? Making sure that our employees feel if that person comes in and is potentially verbally abusive to them, that's something I'm hearing about increasingly, especially in healthcare types of settings. What is the appropriate protocol, and how does that situation get escalated? And does your team know that and understand what to do? If someone difficult, is calling in and they're a client or they're right in front of you, what's that protocol if the situation has to be escalated?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we are running out of time here. So, one, I do want to thank you for being here. And so Barb put the auditor's website on here. Is there anything else small business owners need to know? Let's say they want to take advantage of some of these workshops.
Sure. So they can reach out to me directly by email. We do go out and present these to various business groups. So that's a great question. I think, I mentioned the cyber resources on our website. I also encourage businesses to just check out that special investigations part. If they do suspect fraud, we have a number of ways that can be reported through our website, through our app, through a toll-free number, and through email. And then also, I would encourage them to look at that audit search feature that we have, especially if they want to learn more about a local governmental entity in their own backyard, because they can simply look in that box. Let's just say Westerville City Schools, for example, and look up those audits. So I think those are all some great resources for individuals to take a look at on our website and learning more about their own government, or looking for those cyber resources, for example, that may be helpful to their.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, a great resource. And I got to be honest, I had no idea until you reached out a couple months ago, actually, and said, "Hey, we do this, that, and the other." I'm like, had no idea. So hopefully today has been enlightening on some of the services that are available through the Auditor of State's office, as well as some things that you can put into place with your small business. A couple of dates I want to reference. The next Small Business Breakthrough is currently scheduled for September 25th. Still working on the guest, but I'm sure that it'll be fabulous because they all have been. And if you guys want to make a note, save the date. December 5th is a Friday. That is the next capital crash course. I think this is probably somewhere in the range of maybe the 18th or 19th. I think it's the 19th capital crash course that we've had over the years. And it's a great resource for individuals that are looking to prepare their business for funding and to find funding. So mark that. You'll be getting information on that. And we look forward to seeing you at that. And with that, again, Dorinda, really appreciate you being here today. This has been really insightful, and hopefully everybody has gotten some great information from that. I want to thank Barb Park Navy for pinch hitting for Teresa Green today, as Teresa's taken a couple of well-deserved days off as we move into the Labor Day holiday. And I want to thank everybody who is here and everyone who checks us out on YouTube. And want to wish everybody the best of luck with their businesses as they move forward. And I want to hopefully that you continue to make small business breakthroughs. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you, Mike. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.